Hello, I'm Daniela. In today's video, we're going to make another journal embellishment. And this journal embellishment is great for fabric journals or paper journals, junk journals, anything of the sort. It's a button charm cluster, and this is fantastic. Not only does it use up your supply of buttons, you only need about a couple of dozen of them, but it's a cute little element. It's got a little movement, it swishes, and it's totally up to you to make the size of the cluster what you want. It can be long and dangly or short and stubby. Oh, there's so many possibilities. So let's get started.
So here's an example of this cute little button cluster that you can attach to a journal or even a keychain. It's just cute, and it is really focusing on the buttons that you have. I like to use tiny buttons, but if you want something big and bulky or really dramatic, larger buttons will work. So I found about 24 buttons here. They're all kind of a earth tone color scheme as opposed to these mother of pearl ones. I'm just using some crochet thread. Any thread will work. You just want to make sure that you have a needle, particularly a tapestry needle, because they're kind of dull comparatively speaking. You just want to make sure the eye of the needle can fit through any of your buttonholes. So you'll thread a good length, maybe 24 inches, to start with onto your needle, and there's no need to knot it. You'll also need something to attach, a ring to attach your little button strips to. It can be just a little plastic ring, it can be jump rings. The trouble with jump rings is they open up. So if you're going to use jump rings, I'd suggest at least 2 of them, large enough that you can just use them as one. So you'll just combine them and use them as one. But a plastic ring will work. You can use a little O-ring from the hardware store. You can even use a piece of cardboard that you cut into an O shape. And then you'll need something, your little hardware here, to use as your attachment. Now this is like a keychain attachment. Don't know the exact term. It's kind of like a lobster clasp, which I have right here. You can use those. This is just the lobster clasp. So if you use this, you'll need another jump ring to attach it to your main ring that opens and closes like that. But you don't even need all this hardware. You can just use either a garment pin that you might have left over from purchasing some new clothing. Usually this is what's holding the tag onto the clothing. This is just a tiny little lanyard clip. And again, you might have these in your stash. You might have an old lanyard you're not using anymore. And these, with just a little tension, they open up and you can put your ring through there. Saves the problem for hardware. And if you're using it for a journal, there's no reason you couldn't use just a little paper clip. You can use a safety pin. So you don't have to purchase anything new. You'll start by threading your dull needle. And again, if you don't have a needle, you probably don't need a needle, but it'll drive you nuts trying to poke your thread through the end of some of these buttons. Dulls the thread, and it becomes a frustrating procedure. The needle just makes it less frustrating. So then you take a button. I prefer the smaller ones. You go through either side of the button. It doesn't matter. This one I want the earth tone to kind of be the main focus. And I leave maybe a 2 or 3 inch tail on the end. It doesn't have to be that long. And then I come up through the other hole. And if there are 4 holes, I just go across diagonally. And then I'll just knot the end. Again, I use the end of that needle to help me make a double knot. So I'll knot it once, twice. You can add a dab of glue if you're concerned. You can use a different knot if you prefer. And then I like to just measure a minimum of 5 inches, but as much as 8 inches to add the second button. So I have a little bit of leeway there. I'll grab the second button, do the same thing. I thread it through, find out where I want it on my little measurement scale. That's 10.5 centimeters or 20.5 centimeters, roughly. Thread it through the second button, and then I knot the end again with a double knot. And I'll make about somewhere between 10 to a dozen of these clusters. I'll trim off the ends, and then I'll have enough thread to make a second one without having to rethread my needle. So I'll make about a dozen of these little clusters. So now I have all the buttons on the strands here. Got about a dozen of them. I might use them all, I might not. Now it's time to put them on the ring. You'll just take your button cluster, and fold it in half. You don't have to have it perfectly in half. It can be off center like that. You'll take your ring, feed your loop through your ring, and then feed both of your buttons through that loop. Holding on to the buttons, you just gently pull, and now your buttons are attached to your ring. And I'll do this with all the clusters. Then after you've threaded them all on your loop, this is what you have. It's kind of a fun effect, and the buttons really take center stage here. You can continue to add more buttons if you'd like, but I'm quite happy with that. And now from here, I'll either take a jump ring and add it to my hoop and then put it through this little piece, or I could just use it on a paper clip or a garment pin. If I'm using the garment pin, just open that up and attach it. And so I can attach that to a fabric book or a junk journal. I just think it's a cute little touch, a little accessory that makes the journal a little special, and you can really gear these buttons towards whatever color scheme you like.
So that's how I make my button charm cluster. I love having these little additional elements for journals, whether they're fabric or paper journals. All these elements add a little more interest to the journal, make it personal, and make it things that you like. If you're a button fanatic like I am, this is perfect for your journal. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe. And please consider becoming a paid member of my channel for additional videos and behind-the-scenes content. Thanks so much for joining me today.